All right, we are live. All right. So now it says starting in a few seconds here. So, I got the countdown clock and mine says like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So how come it is not? Okay. All right. Okay. So, we got Hawk counting down the minutes. So I don't see this happening yet.
Okay.
Oh, okay. There we go. Okay. Hang on. I need to turn the. Okay. So can they see us? Let me just see. I got the chat here. Can you see us? All right. So here we go. So can. Oh, okay. So good. They can hear us. Okay.
Oh,
I guess I was about to type it in over there and they and I can see and hear Annette. Great. Well, welcome everybody. This is Abraham Vanismach, and we have Annette Franz here. And we are it's thrilled. Last night we had the kickoff and Sean popped in and said hello. And we're really, really excited about this. But for those of you who don't know Annette Franz, like what Sean was saying last night, if you caught last night, he was saying that we have an amazing lineup of people. Well, here you go. We have the amazing Annette Franz. You want to just tell us just quickly about yourself? You take just a few minutes because we want to really just get right into it and get busy here because these people are waiting.
yeah, of course. And I actually have a slide for that, but I'm going to just skip the slide and I'll just talk. It's easier just to talk. So I have been I have been in this customer experience space for the last 25 years. Started my career at JD Power and Associates in the early 90s. I'm a consultant, a speaker, an author. I now have my own customer experience consulting firm, CX Journey Inc. I have I've been an advisor to startups. I've done a lot of work in this space in journey mapping. So I'm really excited to share with everybody today what I've learned about this topic. So, that's about it. I don't know. Do you want to add anything else? I hate talking about myself. So,
the truth is that it's all the people that are talking about you. That's how you know who you are. So, what do
yeah.
people say when you're not there, right? And so people are saying great things about Ann. Okay. So, hey, Hawk, is that how you say how do you say your name? It was Hawk or Hike? Is that something like that? So anyway, he sent me a beautiful letter today saying he really appreciated what we're doing here, and and it's nice to hear those kinds of things because we work really hard at trying to make things happen, and it's nice to feel appreciated. So,
You've put
CX.
some effort into this. It's been awesome.
Oh, it's a lot of work. So, Hike. Okay, thanks, Hike. So there's a little delay here. So Google Hangouts creates a little bit of a delay. So just bear with us here. If you have questions, just throw them into those. This is what's going to make this thing happen. Is your interaction. Don't be a passive attendee. Just be a proactive participant here. We're here for you, and the more you ask us, the more we're all going to learn together. So we're thrilled to have everybody here. No, that we don't have a hashtag.
Let's make one up.
We can make one up.
You don't have CX Success Summit as your hashtag?
Not in, hash is illegal here in Israel. So, I, I didn't make a hashtag, I'm good with the LinkedIn, but not with the, okay. We got CX Accelerator is going to have to do it for us. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So I'm going to be quiet, which is kind of, rare for me. And I'm going to let Annette take it away because you guys came here to learn. So let's do it.
Awesome. Good. Well, let me go ahead and share my screen because I'm going to do this via slides. So let's do this here. Give me a second here. All right. There's the About Me slide that I hate talking about. So, all right. Can you see my slides? Are you good there?
I can. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then everybody else can too. So awesome. So thank you, seriously, thank you for having me as part of this CX Summit. For all of you who are attending, honestly, I think this is a really great opportunity for you to up your CX game. There's some great folks scheduled to be part of this summit. So looking forward to hearing the rest of the guys, and they are all, I believe they're all guys, talking about, you know, their areas of expertise. So thank you. You know, you guys all came here to learn about journey mapping, and some of you have already mapped you know, customer journeys, but I keep hearing about how journey mapping is failing, right? And I really want to fix that. I've been doing this for years and years and years, and it really breaks my heart to hear, you know, that there's so many bad stories out there about journey mapping. So bear with me. For those of you who are new to mapping, I'm going to start with a few of the basics, and then we'll move into what you came here to learn, which is really how do I take those maps and drive action with them. So I'm going to start, like I said, with the basics. What is journey mapping? And, you know, honestly, it's a very creative process, a process in which we really step back, walk in our customer's shoes, illustrate the steps that they're taking as they're having some interaction or having some experience with our brand. And a good way of looking at it is it's really a timeline of what the customer is doing, right? What they're doing and what they're thinking and feeling along the way, along that journey. And journey maps really tell a story. They tell a story of the customer's journey, and that story helps to build empathy for the customer. And that's a huge part of what we're trying to do here as well. And ultimately, the maps will identify gaps and areas for improvement in the customer journey, but it doesn't stop there, right? And this is where we need to kind of step outside of what we know about just creating the maps to then go ahead and use the maps to co-create a better experience with our customers. So I'm going to take you through some of that. So hang with me. But ultimately, if done right, that's really what journey mapping is all about. It's a way to walk in our customers' shoes, and it's a way to build a better experience for them. So for me, it's really heartbreaking, again, when I hear that they're not being used properly or aren't seeing the outcomes that we had hoped that we would see from them. Why do we map journeys? Well, I like to say that you can't transform something you don't understand. How can you possibly design a future state if you don't know anything about the current state? What's going right? What's going wrong? So there's a lot of reasons to map, but first and foremost, we really just map to understand the customer and understand the experience that the customer is having with your organization so that we can ultimately use them as a tool and a process to help us improve the customer experience. The bottom line really is that maps are a catalyst for change. And you're going to hear me say that a lot throughout this presentation. Maps are a catalyst for change. So how are maps used? I think there's a lot of different ways that maps can be used. And if you follow my blog, you've probably seen, there are two posts, one that's 18 benefits of journey mapping, and another one is 15. So I've come up with 33 different ways that you can use maps. But I think you can sum them up in a nutshell, in these 5 nutshells, so to speak. The first one, again, it helps your company really understand the experience, right? So it highlights and diagnoses existing issues and existing opportunities and get gaps and listening opportunities. So they can really be a benefit for your VOC program as well, because you can identify areas where you need to better listen to your customers. But they're also used really to help you understand what's going well. It's not really all about what's going wrong. And so as we co-create going forward, you know, and defining the future state, we really want to understand what's going well to begin with so that we can continue to do those things too. And then the second thing is to design experiences. Really, we can use the maps to help us to prioritize and rethink existing processes, rules, policies, whatever you're doing, and obviously the steps that customers are taking as well, and help us to create new ones. We then use the maps as a blueprint for implementing the new experience. And then after we've implemented that new experience, more importantly, we then need to also communicate that experience to customers and to employees. So the maps can be used especially as a teaching or training tool within the organization. So you can use it during onboarding to really show new employees what the experience is today, that there really is a customer experience focus or a customer focus in the organization. You can use them for training and ongoing education of your employees as those improvements are made, because obviously your employees are the ones who are delivering those experiences. So they need to know what they need to deliver. And then finally, the maps can be used to align the organization around the customer. So you can use the maps to get executive commitment for the CX strategy. You can use the map to get organizational adoption for that customer experience focus or that customer-centric focus. You can use the maps to provide a line of sight for the employees to the customer to help them understand.
I'm getting some feedback here from a few of the participants is saying that the slides aren't moving. Are you still on your about me? Or are you moving through the slides?
No, I'm on a slide that is titled "How Are Maps Used?"
Okay. I think what's happening is that when you shared it,
yeah.
Did you share full screen or did you share your slides?
I shared full screen.
Okay. Maybe you might. Let's see. She said,
do I need to go back? Do I need to
there you go. Yeah, maybe you have to click them like that.
Oh dear. Okay. Well,
yeah.
That's okay. I can make them.
That's okay. But folks, thank you very much for pointing that out. If you have any questions, please at any time. That's my job over here is to monitor the questions as well. Well, Annette is she's speaking, so if something comes up and you want to ask a question or make a comment, go ahead. I'm here to help you with that. I am your voice today. So
you are the voice of the customer today.
I am the voice of the participants.
Yes. All right. Let me see if I can just try to keep it within.
Thank you very much, everybody, for pointing that out.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry about that. I apologize. Okay, let's see if we, let me just go to the next screen here. So are you seeing a title slide called The Problem?
See it just a moment. So if you see the next, when it finally gets to you, just tell us, yeah, we see the next slide called The Problem. And that way we know we're on track over there.
And I promise we won't do that for every slide. We just want to make sure we're tracking here for the.
Okay. Okay, we said Ollie's in. Okay, thank you, Ollie. Okay, everybody's in. Hey, Andy was there yesterday. So they said they missed some of the slides, and are they shared later? You're going to get your, you want to go back real quick and sort of run through them?
Okay, yeah, you know what was on the slides, or for the most part, I spoke to what was on the slides. So this is the what is journey mapping slide where I went through each one of those items. This is why map journeys. I had a lot more to say than what was just on the slide here. And then the last thing I did was I just went through these 5 points here. So.
Okay. And we're getting asked if they can get a copy of the slides. Is that possible?
Let me think about that.
Okay, we got her thinking about it, guys. We'll work on her later. Okay.
We'll work on it later. Well, and Abraham, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit too, because this is part of sort of an introduction to a masterclass. So I don't know if I need to think about that. So.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we? So we are on the problem is where we're at. So let me make sure we get to the right slide here. This is where we're at. So going back to those 5 uses that I just gave you, right? What I can say to that is if only the maps were being used for those things, right? Instead, they're really just falling flat. They're not delivering maybe one of those outcomes, but not all 5 of them, certainly. So, and I'd like to blame the maps themselves, but I really say that kind of cautiously because maps are not always done right. Sometimes they're done right, but they're not always done right. So, so we're going to go through this and we're going to make sure that when you leave here today, you're going to know the things that you need to include when you're mapping, and then the things that you need to do after you've mapped to make sure that they actually become actionable tools that they are. So because maps aren't being created the way that they should be, aren't being used the way they should be, they're really getting no respect. These are actual headlines. These headlines that I've got here on this slide are actual headlines that I grabbed as I was putting together this presentation because it really shows the frustration that people have with journey mapping. Journey mapping fail. Why journey mapping sucks. The trouble with journey maps. Journey maps are a waste of time. 5 fatal flaws. Those are real complaints, and people are complaining that maps are useless. And we're going to fix this. We're going to fix this here today. So just stick with me, okay? But the good news is that more people are mapping. That's the great news. The bad news is they're just not getting it right. And so wrong doesn't cease to be wrong because everybody's sharing in it, right? So if they were doing it right, we would actually all be seeing improvements in the customer experience. Instead, we're seeing a lot of maps, but little action as a result of those. Remember, maps, they're the catalyst for change. And I'm going to say that over and over. You will hear that several slides in. You will hear that as I keep going through this. So they're the catalyst for change. But let me see if I can get this picture here. Not when they end up like this, right? This is where journey maps go to die. They're put out to pasture. They end up sitting in a pile in a corner somewhere, just waiting to die. I would love to see Abraham raise of hands, or people can, somehow indicate if this picture or this next one look familiar to them, right? Because they're either going to end up in a pile in a corner somewhere. They're going to end up rolled up like they are here in this picture, or they're going to, I've heard people say, oh yeah, we did it and it's stuffed under my desk, or it's just been shoved into a storage closet somewhere. I've seen examples of all of those, but that's where they go to die. So I'm curious if any of the attendees here are, I hate to say it, but guilty of this, if this is where their maps have ended up.
I need to unmute myself. So we have lots of luck from I think it's Nate. He's got it as CX Accelerator, but I think it's Nate. We got that. I think I got that right. Yeah. So he says that's what he says. Lots of luck.
That's a luck, right?
Maps. Yeah, he poured the poor journey maps.
I know.
Oh, here we go. He says the poor journey maps, and it has happened at my company. Andy says. And then Nate comes in and he says, poor journey maps are still on they're still on the wall. He says, we will avoid this death. They're hanging on the wall. They're like gripping on the wall over there.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you for confessing to that. I appreciate that. All right. So hold that thought for a minute, because we're going to fix that. Trust me, we are going to fix that. But I wanted to just step back for a second and just say, hey, you guys aren't alone in this, right? This is happening more often than we care to acknowledge, right? So this is some research that Esteban Kolsky did a year or two ago, but I actually just heard another stat on a call this morning where somebody had very similar findings in their research, right? So in his research, he said 34% of the companies that he surveyed use journey mapping, and 67% expressed absolutely no interest in mapping at all. And so he didn't give a reason for that in his readout, but I have a feeling that the reasons behind why folks have no interest are varied. And some of them may include, hearing, stories like this and, this, where they've just kind of gone to die and nothing has happened, right? So I have a feeling that it's either something like that, or they really don't know what it is, how to do it, what the benefits are. This is, and the next one I'm going to say is probably another good reason why they're dying, right? There's no real CX strategy. And we're going to talk a little bit about CX strategy here as I go through the 6 steps, but they don't have a real CX strategy in place, or they just don't have the resources to do the mapping, which could be a, result of not having a strategy in place. And then of that 34% that actually used the maps, 2% said that they had success. 13% said it worked for them. And I'm guessing that means that maybe there was some tactical stuff that was done, some tactical improvements that were made. And then 72% said that it missed their needs. And that's just really, to me, is mind-boggling. If you've ever, we'll just leave it at that. It's mind-boggling. But this is the point of this presentation, right? This is why we're here. Just because you've created the maps doesn't mean you're done. And at this point, they're really just a picture hanging on the wall. Hopefully a good picture, right? So first you've got to create the maps properly, and then it's time to do something with them. But you've got to know what to do with them. And this is why we're, a little bit journey map challenge, because a lot of folks don't know what to do next. So they don't have to be useless. We can really fix that. So over the next several slides, I'm going to get pretty prescriptive about journey mapping overall. And I think this is the part that you came here for. I know I, share some fun stories and pictures and stats and stuff, but this is what you came here for. This is what you came to find out about journey mapping and why they're not working for you. So I'm about to tell you everything you need to know, everything you need to do to really turn those maps into the catalyst for change that they're meant to be.
I just wanted to pipe in here because let me forgive me if I get pronounce your name wrong. It's Basil, I hope I got that name. He says that he's used them for a year, but because we didn't update them, they became useless. So I just wanted to add that in because Basil is participating over here, and we want to make sure we acknowledge that.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, I will address that too, but they absolutely have to be updated. That's a great point. That's a great point. All right, so why don't I start with some high-level rules of the road? These are really things that you've got to keep in mind as you prepare to map journeys. They're just sort of things that you have to know, right? And will come into play as I go through the next, those 6 steps. So first of all, journey maps are a beginning. They're not the end. They're a beginning. They're a catalyst. Yes, I will say it again. And they have to be a part of your overall customer experience strategy. Seriously, they cannot be a standalone effort, a standalone process. It's great if you've got various departments in your organization that are mapping, but if it's not part of the overall CX strategy, if it's not all governed within the overall governance structure for your customer experience strategy, it's going to fall flat. It will fall flat because when it's under that strategy and it's under that governing body, that governance structure, then the maps and the outputs from the maps, the things that you have to fix, can get prioritized. They can get put into the queue. They can get attention. They can get an implementation team. They can get ownership and accountability, right? So I think this is a really important thing that you need to make sure that you have in place. Maps are collaborative and they're collaborated, right? I'll share with you a bit more about that and about the people who need to be in the room and why and all that as I go through sort of the process. They have to be shared and socialized with the entire organization. How are they going to understand what the experience is, what experience they have to deliver, and how each individual employee impacts it if we don't share and socialize and communicate the maps? And to Basil's point, they have to be updated, right? If you start on butcher paper and post-it notes to do your mapping, which is awesome. I love that because it's a very creative process and it gets people up out of their chairs and thinking and doing, right? You've got to digitize the maps, right? They have to be in a digital format in order to adhere to a lot of these rules, right? It's really hard to share and communicate and use for training and update and do all of these different things with butcher paper and post-it notes. And here's a fun little thing while we're just having fun too, is how many of you have ever done butcher paper and post-it notes and forgot, I think we've all done this once, forgot to tape down your post-it notes the very first time and rolled up your butcher paper and went back to the office, unrolled, and all your post-it notes fell off and now you have no journey map. I think we've all done that once. And unfortunately, this is why they need to be digitized so that they can be safe and updated and communicated and all those things, right? And updated so that they always reflect the current experience. So as improvements are made to the experience, you want to update the map so that they always reflect the most current experience today. Next, they need to be validated. So the best way to map, obviously, is to map with your customers. But if you're starting with assumptive maps, which are created internally and are based on assumptions that we have about what the experience is, they have to be validated by customer. I mean, this is the key thing, right? The customer journey map is all about the customer and it's from the customer viewpoint. And if it wasn't created with the customer, then it needs to be validated by the customer. And then finally, journey maps aren't just for customers. And I'm always surprised to hear people being so shocked when I say you can actually journey map the employee experience too, and the vendor experience and the partner and the licensee and anybody in your ecosystem whose experience you want to improve, you can journey map their experience as well. So that's always a fun one to share. All right, so next thing,
Andy says that he found that taking a picture with an iPhone works too.
Oh, when you're done mapping? Yes, absolutely. But then you can use that to share, but you can't use that to update. You can't really use that to validate if you need to validate. But yes, absolutely. I've done that too, but just to have sort of a static, hard, set snapshot in time of what the map looks like. But it does limit things going forward. You really want to have some kind of digital platform where you ultimately end up putting the maps. Okay. Anything else, Abraham? Any other comments or questions?
No, not yet. And anybody at this point, maybe we'll take a moment. If anybody has a question, please go ahead and put it in. Don't be shy. That's what you guys are here for. Annette, she charges a lot of money for this sort of stuff, and you guys are getting this for free, so take advantage of it. You can ask those questions. You know, she's here for you. All right. So I know we have a little bit of a delay, so why don't you continue on? If I see some questions pop in, then I'll just interrupt.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you. And as I pointed out to Nate this morning, because he shared this webinar with some folks within a Slack channel. And as I shared with him, this is a lot of material that I've never shared on my blog or anywhere else before. So you guys are seeing this stuff for the first time, and I'm sharing it for the first time. So okay, so this next slide is really about the rules of engagement when you get into a workshop. So I've kind of given you a high level sense of kind of the things that you need to think about when you're mapping, but this is, I'm kind of bringing it down a little bit and thinking about some of the things as you engage in your workshop, the rules of engagement for your participants. You've really got to make sure they're engaged. And that sounds like a no-brainer, but you end up learning that you need to remind participants about all of these things. And I've
got a question.
Sure.
Okay, we have Ollie comes in and he says, is it possible to see an example of a journey map, a poor versus effective one, perhaps?
Yes, I am not on a computer right now where I've got that, but I'm happy to, if you want to reach out to me afterwards, I'll share my contact information afterwards. And feel free to shoot me an email and I can do that.
Ollie, we're going to get you covered. Don't worry.
We'll take care of it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sorry, I had to switch computers to do this, so I apologize. Okay, so first rule of engagement is to listen. And this one probably sounds like one of the biggest no-brainers, but especially if you've got customers in the room and you're mapping with customers, your job is to sit there and listen and to learn. Let the customers talk, let them talk amongst themselves and let them do the talking about what is going on in their experience in this particular interaction that they're mapping, right? And hear what they say, really, really hear what they say. Number two is to be people focused. And again, this one sounds like a no-brainer too, because that's what customer journey mapping is all about, is about the customer's experience or the employee's experience. But the people focused part, and I'm going to make a new statement here, and this is going to kind of carry through the rest of the presentation. The people focused part is really a fundamental part of design thinking in this whole creative process. So yes, so there, I've put it out there. Journey mapping is very much a part of that sort of, and that whole process is like the big process that is really important when it comes to journey mapping. If you want to innovate successfully, you've really got to focus on the customer and the customer's needs. And so you need to really focus on the people in this exercise and really focus on the customer. This is about the customer and not about you, the brand, right? You, the company, you, the supervisor, this is about the customer. Number three is to empathize. And empathy is also a fundamental attitude and a fundamental principle of the discipline of design. So, and it really puts a priority on understanding the emotions and what the customer is feeling. And sometimes this is fuzzy, warm and fuzzy. It's a warm and fuzzy kind of thing that people roll their eyes at. But I have to say, it's really, really important. Even in the toughest, least touchy-feely industries, most manly man industries, which I'm working with one right now, the emotion piece has been a huge eye opener. So, and it can be as simple as asking the customer, what were you feeling when that happened? How did that make you feel? Like it's really important to understand that, because it really calls out sort of those moments of truth and those pain points and helps you really understand the customer experience. Number four, be curious. As you're listening and as you're observing, ask questions, right? Ask questions, ask why, and ask your participants to ask each other questions, right? It's great for customers as they're mapping with you to start to ask each other, why? Or why was this happening? Or are you sure this didn't happen first? Or, you know, those kinds of things. It's really a very curious and inquisitive and creative process. And it really is important that they ask questions. I always say in my prep meetings for the workshops, no question is stupid. So keep that in mind. And then finally, have an open mind and let go of what you think you know. You know, let go of those preconceived notions about what you think happened, about why it happened, or about what's possible in the future, right? Just let your guard down. Just be open to what others are saying, right? Be open to what they're saying about the challenges, about what some potential solutions are, those kinds of things. Although we're not going to be doing, you know, creating solutions or developing solutions in the initial current state mapping, but just listen and forget about, you know, what you've always done or what you think the problem is. Because when customers are standing there in front of you and telling you, that's way more important. So be open to that. Okay, so
yeah.
Go ahead. I was just any questions?
Yeah, sorry about that. That wasn't a static. That's just me going. So we have Nate here. He says it's so true that he says the customer's perception is often based on emotions versus logic. And I put into the chat because when I did my expert session with Colin Shaw, he said that it's actually, the studies show it's 50% of the customer experience is that emotional. So it's emotional. So you're doing it, and then Nick comes back in and he says it's a tricky thing to measure, but he believes it in terms of of what Colin was saying.
Right, it's a tricky thing to measure, but to see it, to stand there and map with customers and to see it and to hear it, there is no doubt about it. Right, there is absolutely, you will not doubt anything there. Yeah. Great. Any other questions before I go into, you know, really the process itself?
I think I'm getting choppy in my speaking here. We were having that little problem before, so I apologize for that. Am I coming in better right now?
No, you're actually pretty choppy right now.
Uh-oh. Getting choppy. All right, I'll try to limit what I say then.
Okay. All right, so let me just go ahead and dive in. I know we've got about 30 minutes left, so we want to make sure we leave some time for Q&A, and I really want to, you know, make sure we do a good job going through these steps. So these are the 6 steps from journey maps to results. They're plan, empathize, introspect, identify, ideate, and implement. And you might say, well, those look really familiar, Annette. And they are, right? They kind of mimic the design thinking process. And that's really no surprise because really journey mapping is a part of that, right? You know, and how to get success out of your journey maps is really incorporated into that process, right? So I've got these 6 steps, and Abraham, this might be a good time for us to talk a little bit about the masterclass that we're hoping to plan, the 3-hour masterclass that we're hoping to conduct in April. So I'm going to go through these 6 steps. I'm going to go through them at a relatively high level, just because, again, we've got probably about 15 or 20 minutes left, so we have some time for Q&A. And what I'll be doing in April, if we get enough interest, is hosting a 3-hour in-depth masterclass behind each of these 6 steps, right? So Abraham, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the I guess, for lack of a better word, the commercials, the financial aspect and the all access pass and some of those kinds of things?
I'm not sure if I can, if I'm coming in choppy. I'm trying to, okay. Am I coming in okay now?
You're a little bit better now, a little bit better.
Okay, I'm trying to work this out. It's like somebody thought it might be my headset, but I don't know. Let me see here. Technology is good when it works.
Talk a little bit softer. It's not so bad. So.
Well, maybe I'm too close.
No, maybe.
That could be it. Okay, so basically what's happening here is that Annette can only give you so much in these types of courses. In fact, all the master classes are there. You know, in the short time that we have, they're going to try to give you as much as we can. We don't want to turn it into a pitch because that's not what it's all about. We're here to learn, but at the same time, you folks are here to achieve and to excel, and we have that balance too of the time that our experts have, which they charge a lot of money for their time. They're giving their time here for free for you folks, and to look for people who would be more interested in going into a deeper type of intensive course. So we're going to have these live intensives that we're going to be doing. And the idea is that because, for example, Annette was telling me for something like this would be like $2,500 if a person would hire her to do this. So our idea is, hey, why don't we get a group of people together that can split up that cost, and you can still get that same thing, and it's economical and it works well for all you together. And not only that, but you get more out of it, because then you have a little group of people, like a mastermind of people that can work together to really achieve the results, because then you can get that accountability and people that are just like yourselves that are going to want to excel in that. So I'm going to put a little link and in here that you guys can, if you're interested in this, you can go ahead and sign up. If there's information, I'll be up with you. The price on that's going to be, we figured it'd be $397 with the folks that sign up today. There's no money now. You're not going to pay anything right now. But if those that are interested today that will sign up today, then we're going to give you a coupon for $100 off of that. So that's the sales pitch. That's it. And it's not really a pitch. It's just to help you, you folks to have an opportunity to have an economical way to be able to put something together at the fraction of a cost that you would to take and to hire Annette or somebody like Annette into your company. And if you don't believe what I'm saying, go out and try to call Annette tomorrow and say, how much would it cost for me to work with you one-on-one? So here you go. All right, there's that link. I think that's link. Oh, excuse me, wrong link. That's for the my wife was asking me to send the link over. So I sent it over. She's in here. Say hi. All right, hang on. Let me get you the right link, folks. All right, here you go. So it's just a little form there. There's no commitment. It's just we want to see if there's an interest. We need to get 15 people to make it work, and then we can go ahead and do the intensive. So I'll leave it at that, and then let's move on and let's get educated, and then we'll go to Q&A, and then we'll wrap it up.
All right, let's do this. So let me go through the first step. I promise you will still get some great information over the next 6 or 7 slides that you can take home and make work for you. So the first step is plan, right? It's all about prepping for a successful workshop and then for success as you come out of the workshop, right? How does the saying go? Fail to plan, plan to fail. So let's get things right from the get-go, right? So we're going to start with defining our personas. Who are we going to map for, right? We're not going to map for target audiences or segments. We're going to leave that for the advertising and the marketing folks, right? We are going to be thinking about our design personas and our CX personas, and that's who we're going to be mapping for. So we've got to define those up front. Next, we've got to outline really clear goals and objectives for the workshop. Why are we mapping, and what are we going to do with what we learn, right? Next, we're going to clearly define, and I had to put in there in parentheses and stick to, because a lot of times we don't stick to it, but we need to clearly define and stick to the scope of the map. Pick your point A to point B. What are you mapping, start to finish? What does that look like? And stick to that. And if you decide as you're mapping between point A and point B that there's some micro journeys or things that you know, the journey could branch off into another journey, capture those, put them on a parking lot, you know, have another wall where you capture the post-it notes of other potential journeys that you want to map. But the key here is to stay focused on the journey that you came in to map. We're going to map the current state first. And again, you'd be really surprised at how many people want to go straight to future state, but we can't get to future state without really understanding what the current state is. There are some anomaly instances where you can go to future state, but 99.9% of the time, you are going to start with mapping the current state first, because you've got to understand what's going right and what's not going right, right? And then finally, you got to make sure that you get the right attendees in the room. So ideally, if you're mapping with customers, you're going to get the right folks from, you know, the right customers into the room. If you're starting with an assumptive map, you're going to get the right stakeholders in the room. And when I say the right stakeholders, I mean, I'll give you an example. If you're mapping a customer service experience, you're not just going to have customer service folks in the room. You need to have a salesperson, a marketing person, a person from billing. You need to have a product person, because customers don't call customer service because something happened in customer service, right? They call customer service because something happened with the product. There's an issue with the bill. There's, all those things. And those folks need to be in the room to hear what that experience is, because it kind of puts them on notice, like, oh my gosh. And you will hear this when you're mapping. Oh my gosh, we put our customers through that. We make our customers jump all those hoops to get to, so it's really important to have the right folks in the room, both from the customer perspective and the stakeholders. And then prep your attendees beforehand, right? You need to have sort of a journey mapping 101 meeting beforehand to really help them understand what it is, why we're doing it, what to expect, how to participate. I just recently saw something that Gene Bliss had posted about Mark Slayton at Sandy, what's the name of the bank? Sandy Springs Bank. And he had basically said he had asked somebody to do some journey mapping, but the woman didn't really understand what journey mapping was or what the point of that. So it kind of things just kind of fell apart. And I think that's a really good example of why we need to prep the attendees beforehand to make sure that everybody understands what we're doing and why we're doing it and what ownership potentially they're going to have and accountability going forward.
We have Nate came in and he says he says he's had multiple instances where executives try to turn journey maps into massive process documents. So hard to keep on track at times.
Oh, Nate, you're ahead of me. You're on step number two. And you're absolutely right. That is one of the things that you've got to tell people in advance. You've got to tell them, we are not process mapping. We are journey mapping. We are focusing on the customer's experience, and process mapping is a whole other thing that we have to do and we will do, but that is not what we're doing today. So yeah, great point, Nate. And yeah, absolutely. We've got to let people know that that is not what this is about. All right, so step number 2 is empathize. And empathize really is, here we go. We're diving in and we're mapping, right? So what we're going to do is we have to start with capturing what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. And this is really kind of a good point for me to remind everybody that there are a lot of different frameworks and a lot of different approaches to mapping out there. But the one thing, or the 3 things that they all have in common, the one thing they all have in common is they capture these 3 things: what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling. The maps might look different and they may capture a bunch of other things, but honestly, if you don't have these 3 things, then you're not doing it right? We've got a map from the customer's perspective. So again, this is how we get them over thinking about process mapping, right? We need to map from the customer's perspective. So when we get up there and we start putting the Post-it notes up, or however it is that we're mapping, when we capture the steps, we really need to think in what I call I phrases, right? Or I statements. Using an example of going to get coffee, for example. I got into the car. I drove to the coffee shop. I parked the car. I walked into the coffee shop. I read the menu board. Those are the kinds of things that you need to, those are the types of statements, I should say, that you need to be capturing to make sure everybody stays sort of in that customer mindset, right? So now that you've captured what the customer is doing, thinking, and feeling, I like to then ask them to capture or to post up there on the wall what's happening on stage. And when we talk about what's happening on stage, we're really talking about the people, the systems, the tools, the policies, the processes, the things that the customers use or interact with as they're going through this experience. And I'll go back to the coffee shop example, right? In the coffee shop example, the people, the barista, right? The systems might be your, I'll just mention it, your Starbucks app, right? Those are the kinds of things that you want to capture along that journey so that you really have a really well painted picture of the customer experience. And then comes my reminder that we're not process mapping and we're not problem solving, right? So we let people know we're going to do the process mapping. It is actually one of the upcoming steps here. We will do the process mapping because we're not going to solve this if we don't process map. But today we're not process mapping. Today we're focusing on the customer. We're not problem solving right now. We will problem solve. If they come up with ideas during the current state mapping session, great. Put those up on a parking lot somewhere too. Capture them on a Post-it note. Put them all over there on the wall somewhere else. You don't want to lose the ideas. That's awesome that they're thinking of these things. But we're not doing that today. We're not going to just stand here and, oh, why did that happen? Oh, I know why that happened. Not today. Today, we're all about the customer. And then we want to make sure that we map journeys and not life cycles. And I think I'll probably move this statement to the rules of the road slide and not on this one, because we really want to make sure that from the outset, we're thinking about journeys and not life cycle. The life cycle stages are great for marketing, right? Need, awareness, consider, select, great. That's awesome for marketing and their communications and messaging and everything that they're doing. But for us to be able to clearly design the experience, we need to get to a level of detail about the experience. Like I said, that point A to point B, what's happening there in order to really affect change there. And the map has to be at the right level of detail, right? So don't leave out important steps and capture it. Even if you think it's some minutia detail, just capture it. My personal preference is the more detailed, the better. Some people cringe when you say that about mapping, but how are you really going to know the experience and feel the experience and identify what's going well and what's not going well if you don't capture it at that level of detail? And to that point, I also tell people to make sure that you capture the handoffs and things that are outside of your control, right? Handoffs, so say for example, what's a good example? If something goes from sales to service or whatever it is, or it's, it's sort of that, if you go back to the coffee experience and it's, I drove the car to the store and I went inside the store. Well, sort of the handoff there is you got to park, and the parking is a big problem, right? Something like that, like some of those middle details that shouldn't be missed because that might be a make or break moment, right? And things outside of your control, going back to that example, parking might be outside of your control, but it took me 10 minutes to park at your store. And by the time I got in the store, I was so frustrated. Well, as an experienced designer, you've got to think about, well, how do I mitigate that frustration, right? What do I do when they walk into the store? Maybe hand them a muffin, or there's a video playing of a comedian or something to just kind of help to mitigate some of that frustration until they actually get their coffee in their hands, right? We need to add structured and unstructured data to our maps, metrics, scores, verbatims, anything that brings the journey to life. Ultimately, when you digitize the map, you may actually connect some of your voice of the customer data into your journey mapping platform as well. And identify those key moments of truth. You're going to need that data to help you, A, identify the key moments of truth, and B, understand what's happening at those moments of truth. And those moments of truth are those make or break points where the customer says, yeah, I'm going to continue on with this purchase, or nah, I'm going to go to somebody else, right? Next, we need to bring the journey to life with artifacts. Ask the attendees to bring in things like documents, pictures, screenshots, and documents might be invoices, statements, email messages, those kinds of things. So bring those in so we can put them at the appropriate steps in the journey so that people can really see what's happening and why it's such an issue for the customer. Assign owners to each of the steps that the customer takes, because without accountability, without ownership and accountability, you're going to leave the room and there's not going to be somebody to go to, that throat to choke to go to say what's going on here at this particular step. Just a reminder, we need to validate the maps with customers. If you've been doing an assumptive map, the next step is really to validate the map with customers and then digitize your maps. It's going to be really key to get them into a digital format so that you can abide by the rules of journey mapping. Okay, step 3 is all about introspection. It's all about looking inward. It's time to go. So step 2 was you're in the room, in the workshop with the customer or with your stakeholders or whatever. Let's say this is maybe the next day, or you've excused some of the folks in the room. If your customer's there, you've excused them because they don't need to be a part of step 3. So in this step, you're going to go backstage, you're going to go behind the scenes, you're going to create a service blueprint and a process map. So Nate, this is where the service blueprint and the process mapping happen, right? It's afterwards. And it's an important step in the process, because if you don't understand what's happening behind the scenes to really muck things up for the customer, then you're not going to be able to fix it, right? So the combination of a journey map The service blueprint and the process map give you a complete picture of how that experience is delivered end to end, and then also surface to core, right? And without that sort of view of the journey, you can't really make meaningful changes to the experience. So this is an important step here, but it's not one that happens, you know, in front of the customer or with the customer. So step 4 is to identify. So in this step, you're going to identify those problematic moments of truth, prioritize the moments of truth, research the issues behind each one, conduct root cause analysis for each one, develop action plans for updating the processes and fixing the pain points, and assign owners and deadlines. That's going to be really key. You've got to have owners for each action item or for each action plan. And you've got to have that accountability, because otherwise, again, you're going to walk out of the room and nobody's going to know who owns what and what the next stops are and those kinds of things. Step 5 is to ideate. And this is really where we're going to set up and conduct future state mapping workshops with customers. We're going to ideate solutions for the current pain points that your customers are experiencing. And then with stakeholders and within internal teams, you're also going to ideate sort of the backstage and behind the scenes processes to solve the problems that are happening behind the scenes. And then you're going to design the future state. And this is really where that rule of engagement of, you know, open mind and letting go of what you think, you know, really comes in handy. This is where you're going to, you know, again, let your guard down and forget about, but we've always done it this way, you know. I was telling a client the other day, I go, think unicorns and rainbows at this point, pie in the sky ideas, however you want to put it, just let it go and let folks come up with ideas that you might not ever implement, but hey, you never know, right? Something might come up that you might have never thought of, and it might stick. So this is a fun stage, actually. And then finally, the last step in the process is to implement. So you're going to prototype and test the new experience design with your customers. Fail fast. If it didn't work for them, do it all over again, right? Prototype and test until you get it right. And again, this is very much like, you know, part of the design thinking process too. Then you're going to implement the new experience, the onstage, the backstage, and behind the scenes. It's all going to be brought together, and the new experience is going to be implemented and delivered. And then you need to train the employees on the new processes, and you need to train the employees on how to deliver that new experience, and then close the loop with customers. We've got to let them know that we've listened, and hey, here's what the new experience is. And then finally, and I don't think you can see this down here, at least it's being cut off on my screen. Let me scroll this up, is that you've got to update the maps, right? The maps always have to reflect the current experience, current improvements, current design, whatever you want to call it, but the map should always reflect what the current experience is. And that's it. That's all you have to do. Oh, that's funny, Annette, right? I know it's not that easy. I know it's not. I know it's a lot of work, and I know it takes time, but let me just throw one thing out there that I think is really, really important. And I've said it earlier, and I think I said it a couple times, but remember, this all needs to be part of your overall customer experience strategy. It can't be a one-off exercise. It can't be just siloed somewhere and think it's going to become successful. You might be able to make some tactical changes as a result of that, but it really is, once you get into the service blueprinting and the process mapping, and if you decide to do value stream mapping and all of that too, it becomes a bigger organization sort of initiative, right? So it needs to be part of your overall CX strategy. It's a lot of work, and maybe that's why companies don't want to use maps or aren't using them or aren't getting anything out of them. I don't really know. But honestly, again, you can't transform something you don't understand. And the maps are the best tools out there that I know of today that help you understand what that current experience is. So, all right. So one last favorite saying, and this is one that I find myself using quite often with my clients as they're going through their customer experience transformation. I have to keep reminding them, you have to do something, right? You have to do something with what you learned. If not, nothing changes if nothing changes. It's just as simple as that. You've got to do something with what you've learned. And if you don't, you're going to see the same thing happening tomorrow as you are today, right? So you've really got to use what you've learned and do something with it. And I hope the steps that I've outlined here give you sort of a new perspective on what all it happens, you know, after you're finished mapping. maps themselves are important, but what all happens after you've mapped is really important. So final slide here. Just to wrap this up, because I know we're just about out of time, and I want to leave a couple minutes at least for questions if there are any. But I wanted to just kind of go, okay, 30 minutes ago or 45 minutes ago, however long it's been, you might not have known that there were so many rules and principles to journey mapping, right? But if you follow them, you're going to have some good outcomes, right? 30 minutes ago, you might not have known that you need to map the current state before future state. Again, so many people want to go straight to future state, and that's not how this is going to work. 30 minutes ago, you might not have known that maps can be used for all of your constituents, not just for customers and not just for customer journeys. You might not have known that there is still a lot to do after you map. Yep, you've got to get the map right, but there's still a lot of work to do, as you just saw. There's still a lot to do after you finish mapping. And I have to say it one last time, you might not have known that maps are a catalyst for change. When they're done right, they can really kick somebody's booty and get them motivated to change. Trust me, I have seen it, and I have seen it work. And I think it's the best tool out there. And then finally, 30 minutes ago, you might not have known that what happens after you map is really probably the most important part of the whole process. You've got to do something with it. And again, if you don't, nothing changes and nothing changes. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I am here to answer any questions for the next 5 or 6 minutes. Here's my contact information. If I can ever help you in any way or answer any questions, I am always happy to do that. So with that, Abraham, I will turn it over to you. If we've got questions, that would be awesome.
Okay, folks. So I can hear feedback now. Now I hear myself talking here. So,
is that?
Could be me. Okay, there we go. Okay, so if anybody has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and put them in. That's what you're here for, and this is valuable time that you can use to help you get what you need. Also, too, I put that link back in. If we can get enough people together as a group, which is really awesome, that's the whole idea, is if you can work together as a group, you can really put that map together that you need, that is going to work for you. That's the key, is to be able to get it so you can get into a situation and work with somebody and work with even the group of people, your peers, together to make sure that you're going to be able to get that in. We got some questions here. Let's see here. Todd says, at what point in the relationship with the customer is the journey mapping a necessity? Just starting out? When are there issues? Is there a specific time? So did that come out clear? Should I say that again?
No, but I think I get the point. And I think I like to answer the question by saying, at what point do you want to keep your customers, right? So I'd like to, I've worked with startups who are just in the, they haven't even launched yet. They're pre-launch, and they're saying, we want to get the customer experience right. So if you've got customers that you want to keep, and whether you're just starting out or you're a 150-year-old business, it's never too late to start journey mapping.
And I have from Nate here. He says, who makes the better customer journey mapping facilitator? Someone internal who knows the business but may not be a journey map expert, or external journey map expert who may not know the business very well?
So that's actually a really good question. And I would lean toward the external person, because I think the internal people in any sort of process like that will get too involved in the process and sort of sway things and not really, but you know what, ultimately, as a facilitator, an outside facilitator, my job too is to teach people how to do this on their own. So if you can get somebody internally who can stay unbiased, who can stay focused on just facilitating the workshop and focusing on the task at hand, then that's awesome. So I don't know that, but I think I answered that out of both sides of my mouth. But ultimately, if you don't have anybody internally that you think can remain unbiased, then I would go outside. But if you've got somebody that you can, who can remain unbiased and can keep folks on task, then I think that's fine.
Nate says, thanks, Annette. I appreciate the response on that question. Very helpful. We have also from Andy here. He says, what is a typical amount of time to hold a journey mapping session? Is it better to break up it into multiple sessions?
So I have found that, and lately I've been working with clients where we have done it in 4 hours, which is sort of a sort of fast tracked, which and it's been with customers. I think you can do it in 4 hours. And what I've done too is in some of the sessions we'll just do one map and everybody focuses on that one map. And in some of them we've broken up people into different groups and we've done 2 or 3 maps. I think 4 hours is a good amount of time. And again, you're focusing sort of on that above the line, right? You're focusing on the thinking, doing, feeling, and then the on stage stuff, but you're not focusing the behind the scenes and the backstage stuff. That's going to take a lot more time. But the other stuff you can do within 4 hours, I would say.
And then we have from Basil, he says, can you tell something about the personas through the entire process?
Okay. Personas. Well, so personas are really research-based depictions of sort of common groups or types of customers. And the difference between the buyer persona and what, marketing and your marketing team uses and what the CX team uses is we need to know within our personas, what are the customer's pain points? What problems are they solved? What are their needs? What jobs are they trying to do? Those kinds of things. So that's the kind of information that typically doesn't appear within the buyer personas. A lot of times too, we'll do some empathy mapping as well, and bring that all together and really have a better understanding of the customer motivation and again that emotional piece behind the customer. If you're talking, Abraham, I can't hear you.
I have to unmute myself. So
that helps.
So here we go. All right. So if anybody has any other questions, and please feel free to put them in. I think. Well, you said you had a hard stop on the hour here. Yeah. So my clock says it is on the hour. So I don't want to delay. We appreciate your time. I put that link back up there for you. You can go ahead and we can go into that deep dive class. It'll help you be able to put this together in a proper way. As you can see, Annette knows what she's talking about, and I don't want to delay her any longer. She says she has an appointment, and thank you so much. We really appreciate that. And we have a question from Andy. So Andy, what I'm going to do is I'll just shoot that over to Annette, and she can answer you personally when she finishes whatever she's doing there. So if you have any other questions, just go ahead and throw them into the chat here, and I'll make sure that those get over there. And also as a plug for the CX Success Summit, support the cause, get yourself an all access pass, and you'll be able to get a lot more out of what you're doing here for a very reasonable price. Very reasonable for what you're getting for this. The master classes, you can get the replays on. Everyone can get that until the expert sessions start, and then it goes into the all access pass mode. But you'll have plenty of time to be able to see this over and over again. I think someone asked if she can get let's see. Someone asked if they can get the slides. They really want to get those slides. So if it's possible, let me know. If not, you'll be able to review that again because Annette went through all the slides on this course here, and you can go ahead and at your own pace, you'll be able to see that. Just click back on the link as soon as YouTube finishes processing this. You can just click the same link and you'll be able to replay this. No problem. So one way or another, you'll be able to get those slides. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Abraham.
Yeah, thank you for your time, everybody. Really appreciate it.